1 month after my daughter's wedding, the photographer called me and whispered, "Sir, I noticed something terrible in the photos. Come immediately alone and don't say anything to your daughter. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments." The phone rang just as I sat down my coffee. Tuesday morning quiet house. Financial report spread across my desk. The kind of peaceful moment I'd earned after 40 years building Reynolds Hardware. 3 stores across Phoenix. Good business. Good life. I almost didn't answer the unknown number. "Mr. Reynolds." The woman's voice trembled. "This is Carolyn Thornan. I photographed Jack Will's wedding last month. I need to see you immediately alone. Please don't tell your daughter." My hand tightened on the phone. "What's wrong? I can't explain over the phone, but I found something in the photographs. Something very serious." The air in my office changed, became thinner somehow. "What kind of something? Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, my studio downtown. Please, Mr. Reynolds, come alone." Before I could respond, Wendy's voice exploded from the kitchen. "Ben, I told you 3 times already. I need that car. My Honda is embarrassing. You promised you'd ask him today." Benjamin's laugh rumbled from the living room, some television show blaring beneath it. "I'll be there," I said into the phone, barely hearing my own voice. Carolyn exhaled. "Thank you. I'm so sorry, Mr. Reynolds. I really am." She hung up. I sat motionless at my desk, the phone still pressed to my ear, staring at the frame photograph on my wall. Jacqueline in her wedding dress, radiant. Samuel beside her in his tuxedo. 1 month ago, $65,000 I'd spent on that day. Worth every penny to see my eldest daughter happy. Something very serious in the photographs. "Dad." Wendy appeared in my doorway, phone in one hand, car keys in the other. "Did you hear me? I need money for a new car. The Honda is 7 years old, and it's humiliating. I looked at my youngest daughter, 31 years old, living in my house for 4 years now, temporarily," she'd said when she moved in after her divorce. Benjamin had followed 6 months later. No rent, no end date. "We'll talk about it later, sweetheart." Later. "I need to go to the dealership this week. Melissa got a new Lexus, and I can't keep showing up in that piece of junk." I turned back to my computer screen. The numbers blurred. "Dad, are you listening? Hey, later." "Wendy." She huffed and disappeared. Her footsteps stomped up the stairs. A door slammed. I picked up my coffee. Cold now. Through my office window. The Paradise Valley morning stretched bright and cloudless. July heat already building. Everything looked normal, felt wrong. The day crawled forward. I tried focusing on inventory reports, quarterly projections, payroll schedules. My mind kept circling back to Caroline's trembling voice. The wedding had been perfect, hadn't it? Jacqueline had glowed. Samuel had been attentive. The ceremony at the Botanical Gardens reception, at that upscale resort, everything elegant, tasteful, expensive. What could possibly be wrong with the photographs? Around noon, Benjamin wandered into my office without knocking. Never knocked. Just walked in like he owned the place. "Hey, Pops? Wendy says you're being weird about the car thing." I didn't look up from my computer. I said we'd discuss it later. "Yeah, but she's pretty set on it." Maybe just give her the money, keep the peace. He leaned against my door frame, arms crossed. 38 years old, no job. Living off my daughter's allowance, which meant living off me. Benjamin. I'm working. Sure. Just saying. Happy wife, happy life, right? He grinned and left. Happy wife. He'd never married Wendy. 4 years together, living in my house, and he couldn't be bothered to make it official. But he had opinions about how I should spend my money. I stood and walked to my window. Below my pool sparkled unused. The guest house where Wendy and Benjamin stayed sat at the far edge of the property. Separate entrance, full kitchen, 2 bedrooms. I'd had it built thinking visiting grandchildren might use it someday. No grandchildren, just Wendy and Benjamin. The afternoon bled into evening. I heated leftover pasta, ate alone at my kitchen counter, while Benjamin occupied my living room, and Wendy video called someone upstairs, her laugh piercing through the ceiling. At 7:30, my doorbell rang. Jacqueline stood on my front step, perfect as always. Tailored blazer, designer jeans, that smile she'd inherited from her mother. My eldest, my successful one marketing executive. Beautiful home, well apartment, currently married to Samuel Pfizer, investment banker. Hi, Daddy. She kissed my cheek and walked past me into the house. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by. Paradise Valley to her place in Scottsdale wasn't the neighborhood, but I didn't mention it. She settled onto my couch, crossed her legs, looked around the living room like she was appraising it. How are you? You look tired. Long day business things. She picked up a framed photo from my side table. Her and Wendy as children. Studied it. Set it back down slightly off-center. Samuel and I have been house hunting. We found the most incredible place in Scottsdale. 4 bedrooms, pool, mountain views. Absolutely perfect. I sat in the chair across from her, waited. The thing is, we need to move fast. Market's competitive right now. We need help with the down payment. She smiled warmly. 40,000. You understand, right? After everything you spent on the wedding, this is just completing the picture. Helping us start our life together properly. $40,000 said like she was asking to borrow my truck. Something in my chest tightened. That hollow feeling from earlier expanded. 40,000, I repeated. Is that a problem? A slight edge entered her voice. So slight, most people wouldn't catch it. Dad, we need to move fast. The market is competitive. I thought you'd want to help us start our life together properly. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. The designer clothes, the manicured nails, the practiced warmth that didn't quite reach her eyes. Let me think about it, sweetheart. Her smile faltered just for a second. Think about it, Dad. This is important. Samuel and I need to review some things first. She stood abruptly. Fine, but don't take too long. We can't lose this house. She grabbed her purse, kissed my cheek again, colder this time. Love you, Daddy. Call me soon. I watched her Mercedes pull away, standing in my doorway. $40,000 delivered like I'd already agreed, like my money was her money. Benjamin's laughter echoed from the living room sports highlights on my television. His beer bottle sweating onto my coffee table. I walked back inside, but something had shifted. The house felt different. Or maybe I was seeing it clearly for the first time. My phone sat on the hall table where I had left it. Caroline's number still in the call log. Tomorrow morning, her studio. Whatever she'd found on those wedding photographs, I had a feeling it would explain this hollow sensation spreading through my chest. I picked up the phone and looked at Jacqueline's last text. Thanks for understanding about the house, Dad. Love you. I hadn't agreed to anything, but she'd assumed. They all assumed. I left the house before Wendy woke up. Didn't want questions. Didn't want Benjamin asking where I was going with that look he got. Like everything I did required his approval in my own home. The drive to downtown Phoenix took 25 minutes. Tuesday morning traffic. I-51 South, then surface streets to Caroline's studio, a converted warehouse in the Arts District. Her name on a brass plate beside the door. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, but my mind kept replaying her voice on the phone. Something very serious. I parked across the street, sat in the truck for a moment. Whatever was inside that studio, whatever Caroline had found, it would explain Jaylene's casual request for $40,000. It would explain the hollow feeling I'd carried since the wedding. I knew it would. I just didn't want to know how. The studio smelled like coffee and printer ink. Professional photographs lined the walls. Weddings, families, corporate headshot. Caroline met me at the door, younger than I'd remembered from the wedding day. Mid-40s, maybe. Nervous hands, apologetic eyes. Mr. Reynolds, thank you for coming. She locked the door behind me. I have everything set up in the editing room. I followed her through the gallery space to a smaller room dominated by a large monitor and computer equipment, wedding portfolios stacked on shelves. The window overlooked an alley. Morning light filtered through dusty glass. Can I get you coffee water? I'm fine. I wasn't fine. Please just show me. She nodded and sat at her computer. I remained standing behind her chair. Mr. Reynolds, I almost didn't call you. I went back and forth for days, but if I were in your position, I'd want to know. Please understand I didn't go looking for this. My throat tightened. Show me. Her fingers moved across the keyboard. The monitor filled with images from Jacqueline's wedding. The ceremony. My daughter walking down the aisle. Samuel waiting at the altar. Guests smiling. Everything beautiful. Everything perfect. These are the standard shots, Caroline said softly. What you saw at the wedding, what everyone saw. She clicked to the next folder. 2 hours before the ceremony. I was at the restaurant venue early, testing exposures, calibrating equipment. There's a terrace overlooking the courtyard. Another click. I was shooting through a window, adjusting light settings. The image appeared. My hands gripped the back of her chair. Samuel, my son-in-law, in his tuxedo, not yet buttoned properly, pressed against a woman with red hair. Not my daughter kissing her, his hands in her hair, her arms around his neck. Not a friendly embrace, not a goodbye to an old friend. Intimate, possessive, familiar. How long before the ceremony, my voice sounded far away. You're certain about the time 2 hours before. The metadata is here. Date, time, GPS coordinates. She pulled up a technical display. Numbers, timestamps, location data. I was at the restaurant venue early, testing exposures through a window. I captured this by accident, but it's real, and there are multiple shots. She clicked forward. Different angles, same scene. Samuel and the red-haired woman locked together. In one photo, the woman's hand was visible, left hand pressed against Samuel's chest. Wedding ring, gold band, diamond. The woman. I leaned closer to the screen. The wedding ring. Do you know who she is? Carolyn shook her head. I don't recognize her from the guest list. I'm so sorry, Mr. Reynolds. She pulled up another image. This one showed Samuel's face clearly. No confusion in his expression, no drunken stumble, just confidence control. A man who knew exactly what he was doing. 2 hours before marrying my daughter. I straightened slowly. My knees felt weak. The room tilted slightly, then righted itself. Can you prove the timing? Absolutely. Prove it. Yes. Caroline opened another window, showed me technical data I barely understood, digital fingerprints, file information, GPS coordinates, matching the restaurant location, timestamps down to the second. This is forensic-level evidence, Mr. Reynolds. It would hold up anywhere. She reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small flash drive. Everything is here. All the photos, all the metadata, technical documentation. I made copies. She held it out to me. I don't know what you'll do with this information, but I believe you should have it. I took the flash drive, closed my fist around it. Don't apologize, I said. You did the right thing. The drive back to Paradise Valley passed in a blur. I gripped the steering wheel tight, stared at the road, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Samuel Pfizer, investment banker, polished, articulate, successful, everything I'd wanted for my daughter. Kissing another woman 2 hours before their wedding, a woman wearing a wedding ring. Not a mistake, not cold feet, calculated, deliberate. Why marriage Colin at all? The question circled my thoughts like a vulture. Why go through with a $65,000 wedding to a woman you were betraying hours before the ceremony? Why make those vows? Why smile in those photos? What was the point? My truck knew the way home without my thinking. Paradise Valley streets, my neighborhood, my driveway. The flash drive sat in my pocket, heavy as a stone. I pulled into my driveway just after 11. The house looked the same as when I'd left 2 hours ago. Same desert landscaping, same security light that needed fixing, same everything. But I wasn't the same. I opened the front door. Benjamin sprawled across my leather recliner, beer in hand, some game show blaring. He didn't look up. Hey, old man, grab me another beer while you're up. From upstairs, Wendy's voice. Dad, is that you? I need to talk to you about money for the spa this weekend. I stood in my own entryway, flash drive in my pocket, and something inside me that had been bending for years finally snapped. My daughter's husband cheating 2 hours before the wedding. My other daughter living in my house demanding spa money. My son-in-law ordering me to bring him beer in my chair in my house. I closed the door behind me with a quiet click. They thought I was the same man who'd left this morning. They were wrong. Sleep was impossible. I sat in my office past midnight, the flash drive from Carolyn on the desk beside my laptop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photographs. Samuel's face, confident, not guilty, not confused, confident. I opened my laptop and pulled up the wedding budget spreadsheet. $65,000 I'd spent. Venue, catering, photographer, flowers, band, everything wanted, but she'd insisted on one thing specifically: cash gifts. No registry, no toasters or china patterns. Dad, we're starting fresh. We need flexibility. Cash is more practical. I'd thought she was being mature, practical. Now I wondered what I'd actually paid for. I grabbed a legal pad and started writing numbers, dates, details that suddenly seemed wrong. The guest list had been 200 people, mostly my business associates, my friends, people who had known Jaylene since childhood, each envelope at the reception. I remembered the gift table overflowing. Jacqueline had hired someone specifically to collect them, count them, catalog them. $45,000 in cash and checks. She'd told me the total the week after the wedding, laughing about their good fortune. Samuel and I are so blessed, Dad. Everyone was so generous. I wrote that number down, circled it. Then I remembered something else. My business partner, Marcus Chen, had handed Samuel a check directly at the reception. Welcome to the family, son. Start your life right. I'd been standing there. $15,000. Marcus was wealthy, generous to people he respected. Samuel had pocketed that check and smiled. Thank you, sir. We won't forget this. $60,000 total from one wedding for a couple supposedly starting out. Why marry Jacqueline at all? I stared at that question on my legal pad. If Samuel had another woman, a woman wearing a wedding ring, why go through with a $65,000 ceremony? Why smile in those photos? Why take those vows unless the vows didn't matter, unless the money did? My stomach turned. The night dragged on. I made coffee around 3 o'clock in the morning, stood at my kitchen window watching the dark desert hills. Somewhere in Scottsdale, Jacqueline slept beside the man who'd betrayed her hours before their wedding. Or maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't care. That thought was worse than the first. At 7, I showered and dressed business casual khakis polo shirt. Left the house before Wendy woke up. Didn't want questions. Didn't want to see Benjamin sprawled on my couch. The bank opened at 9. I drove to the downtown Phoenix branch where I did my business banking. Professional territory, safe ground. The manager, Patricia Williams, greeted me in her office. We'd worked together for 15 years. Mr. Reynolds, what brings you in this morning? I wanted to verify a check I wrote. Wedding gift for my daughter, $20,000. Want to make sure it cleared properly. Patricia pulled it up on her computer. Let me see. Yes, here it is. Joint account for Samuel and Jack and Fisher. Check cleared without issues. Joint account, I said casually. When did they open that? Patricia scrolled. Looks like 2 months ago, May 10th. 2 months before the wedding. Not years. Not when they got engaged. 2 months. They must have moved fast on wedding planning, I said, keeping my voice light. Young people these days. Patricia smiled. Everything happens quickly. I thanked her and left. In my truck, I sat with the engine running May 10th. They had opened a joint account specifically to receive wedding money. Planned it, coordinated it. This wasn't romance. This was logistics. I drove home through late morning traffic, mind churning. The house looked quiet when I pulled into the garage. Benjamin's car was there. Old Camry he refused to maintain, always asking for money to fix it. I entered through the garage door to the kitchen, planned to go straight to my office. Then I heard Wendy's voice from upstairs. Yeah, Dad looks suspicious lately. Her voice carried down from the second-floor landing. Phone conversation. Volume too loud. The way she always talked. I don't know. Different somehow. But don't worry, sis. Ben and I can stretch this another 6 months easy. By then he'll cave and buy us that condo just to get rid of us. I froze in the hallway. Jacqueline's voice came through the phone speaker. Wendy had it on high volume, laughing. Perfect. I've got 2 more months of playing happy wife. Then I file. Half those gifts are legally mine in Arizona. Samuel already agreed to 60-40 split. Easiest $45,000 I ever made. My hand found the wall, steadied myself. Wendy laughed. And Sam's little girlfriend doesn't even know about the plan. This is perfect. Dad's so busy feeling proud of your marriage. He doesn't see anything. Keep him distracted, Jacqueline said. Make him think you need something big. That way, when I ask for the house down payment, it won't seem excessive by comparison. Already on it. Asked him for a new car yesterday. He looked annoyed, but he'll come around. He always does. I backed away. Silent, careful. Each step measured until I reached my office. Closed the door, leaned against it. My hands were shaking. 2 daughters, both lying, both using me. One planning divorce to steal wedding money. The other squatting in my house, running out the clock until I bought them off, playing happy wife. Easiest $45,000 I ever made. I'd almost let it happen. Almost written Jacqueline that $40,000 check for her house down payment. Almost. I sat down at my computer, typed property lawyer, Phoenix, Arizona. Robert McKenzie's name appeared third in the search results. 25 years experience, real estate law, family trusts, asset protection. His office had an opening tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. I made the appointment. Then I sat back in my chair and looked at my closed office door. Beyond it, Wendy was probably still on the phone. Benjamin was probably still planted on my couch. Both comfortable, both confident. They had no idea what was coming. I didn't either. Not exactly. But tomorrow I'd start finding out. Tomorrow I became something other than a wallet with a heartbeat. Mackenzie's office was in a glass building downtown 23rd floor. I arrived 10 minutes early and spent them in the parking garage, organizing my folder one last time. Wedding spreadsheet. Flash drive from Carolyn. My notes from last night. 3 pages of timelines, quotes, dollar amounts, evidence. The elevator ride up felt longer than it was. I'd made business decisions for 40 years, negotiated supplier contracts, handled employee disputes, weathered economic downturns. This shouldn't feel different, but it did. This was my family, my daughters. The elevator doors opened. No, not family, not anymore. They'd made that choice when they turned me into a transaction. The reception area was professional. Glass desk, leather chairs, abstract art I didn't understand, but recognized as expensive. A woman looked up from her computer. Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Mackenzie is ready for you. His office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Phoenix mahogany desk, law books lining one wall, diplomas and bar certificates and frames. Robert Mackenzie stood as I entered 50s gray at the temple's firm handshake. Mr. Reynolds, please have a seat. Can I offer you coffee? Yes, Black. He poured from a carafe on the credenza, handed me a ceramic mug settled behind his desk. I reviewed your intake form. You mentioned property issues and family matters. Tell me what's happening. Start wherever makes sense to you. I placed my manila folder on his desk, opened it methodically. A month ago, I paid for my daughter's wedding $65,000. 3 days ago, the photographer showed me pictures of my son-in-law with another woman 2 hours before the ceremony. Yesterday, I discovered my daughter's plan this. The marriage was a scam to collect cash gifts and split them. Mackenzie's pen paused over his legal pad. When you say plan this, you have evidence both your daughter and her husband intended to divorce from the beginning. I overheard my younger daughter on the phone with her sister. Quote, 2 more months and I file for divorce. Half the gifts are legally mine. Samuel already agreed to 60-40. Those were my daughter's exact words. I slid the flash drive across his desk. The affair photos are here. Metadata included. Timestamps, GPS, coordinates, everything. Mackenzie inserted the drive into his computer, clicked through files. His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened slightly. And your younger daughter, Wendy? She's been living in my house for 4 years. Her boyfriend with her. No rent. No lease, constant money demands. I pulled out my handwritten notes. Yesterday's phone call, she told Jackin they'd stretch it another 6 months until I bought them a condo. Mackenzie made notes, circled specific details, underlined 4 years and no lease. Mr. Reynolds in Arizona property law is very clear. Your house is your property. If there's no written rental agreement, and you've indicated there isn't, you have the right to begin eviction proceedings. The standard timeline is 30 days after written notice. And my younger daughter, her boyfriend, they've lived there 4 years without paying rent. Can they fight this not successfully? Without a lease, they're essentially guests who've overstayed. Arizona law protects property owners. The 30-day notice is a courtesy, not a negotiation. Something loosened in my chest. A courtesy, not a negotiation. Mackenzie pulled a thick book from his shelf. Arizona Property Code opened to a flagged section, turned it so I could read. I leaned forward, scanned the legal text, residential tenancy requirements, notice periods, eviction procedures. It's straightforward, Mackenzie said. We draft a formal notice. You serve it personally or via certified mail. They have 30 days to vacate. If they refuse, we file with the court for removal. Given the lack of any rental agreement, judges rule quickly on these cases. What about the rest? I looked up from the book. My assets, my business. I don't want them getting anything when I'm gone. They've made it clear. I'm just a resource to them. Mackenzie closed the property code. That's where an irrevocable trust becomes valuable. We transfer your assets, house, business interests, savings into a trust managed by a professional trustee. You maintain control during your lifetime, but after death, distribution follows your instructions. It's much harder to challenge than a simple will. Harder to challenge, I repeated, nearly impossible if structured correctly. A will can be contested. People claim undue influence, mental incompetence, all sorts of arguments. A properly executed, irrevocable trust established while you're clearly competent and acting freely. That's a different legal standard entirely. I sat back. How soon can we start? Mackenzie smiled slightly. First real emotion he'd shown. Today I'll need you to sign an engagement agreement. My fees for this work eviction notices will revision and complete trust creation will be $8,500. The trust work alone typically runs $6,000. But given the connected nature of your situation, I can offer a package rate $8,500. I'd spent $65,000 on a fake wedding, another $45,000 collected by my daughter and her accomplice husband. Tens of thousands more over 4 years supporting Wendy and Benjamin. That's acceptable. Mackenzie pulled documents from his drawer. Engagement agreement fee structure timeline estimate. We'll have the eviction notices drafted by Friday morning. You'll serve them this weekend. I recommend doing it personally so there's no question of receipt. After service, the 30-day clock starts. They must vacate by that date or face legal removal, and the trust 2 to 3 weeks for complete asset transfer. I'll work with your financial institutions directly. We'll need current statements for all accounts, property deeds, business ownership documents. My paralegal will coordinate with you on specifics. He slid the contract across his desk. I read it carefully. Years of business had taught me that. Scope of work, fee schedule, timeline, everything Mackenzie had promised formalized in legal language. I signed with a steady hand. Mackenzie countersigned, dated it, handed me copies. Mr. Reynolds, I should mention this will likely destroy your relationship with your daughters permanently. Once you serve those eviction notices, once they discover the trust structure, there's no walking this back. I know, Anne. You're prepared for that. I thought about Wendy's laugh on the phone, Jacqueline's casual cruelty playing happy wife. Easiest $45,000 I ever made. They destroyed the relationship themselves. I'm just acknowledging reality. Mackenzie nodded. Then we're clear. I'll call you Friday morning when the documents are ready. We shook hands again. Longer this time. Something passed between us. Professional respect, maybe. Understanding. I left his office with copies of the contract, timeline, outline, trust structure, summary legal documents that meant one simple thing. I was taking my life back. The elevator down was faster than the ride up. Gravity working in my favor. In the parking garage, I sat in my truck with the contract copies on the passenger seat. Eviction procedures, wheel modification summary, trust structure, outline. My phone buzzed. Text from Jacqueline. Dad, did you think about the down payment? We really need an answer. The house won't wait forever. I looked at the message for a long moment. $40,000 for a house she'd live in for 2 months before filing for divorce. I deleted the text without responding. Then I started the truck and headed home. Wendy and Benjamin would be there comfortable and confident, expecting nothing to change. They had 30 days left to enjoy that confidence. I had 30 days to prepare for war. The envelopes arrived Friday morning. Mackenzie's return address, heavy paper, official seals. I set them on my desk and looked at them for most of the day. By evening, I was ready. I could hear Wendy and Benjamin in the living room. Benjamin's voice carried excited, animated, another scheme, another ask. I picked up the envelopes and walked down the hall. They were on the couch, comfortable. Benjamin gesturing, Wendy nodding. My television, my couch, my living room. And craft breweries are huge right now, Benjamin was saying. Phoenix market is perfect. We'd need about 30,000 to start. Your dad would see returns in a year. Easy. Wendy laughed. He'll do it. He always does. Just frame it as helping family, and he'll write the check. I stepped into the room. They looked up, smiling, expecting nothing. I placed the envelopes on the coffee table between them. What's this? Wendy picked up, hers puzzled. Dad, we're talking about Ben's brewery idea. Official eviction notice. You have 30 days to find other housing. The words landed like stones in still water ripples of silence spreading outward. Wendy tore open her envelope, read the heading. Her face drained of color. Benjamin grabbed his, scanned it. Have you lost your mind, old man? This is our home. This is my house. You can't just kick us out like we're strangers. Benjamin stood, stepped toward me, fists clenched, face weening. We're family. Wendy's tears started right on schedule. Dad, what are you doing? I'm your daughter. How can you throw us out? I looked at her calmly. You haven't paid rent in 4 years. You don't respect me. You see me as a wallet. Time to grow up. This is insane. Benjamin moved closer, invading my space. Old intimidation tactic. Everyone will know what kind of father you are. Throwing out your own kid. The notice is legal. 30 days. I suggest you start packing. Wendy grabbed my arm. Dad, please. We can work this out. We'll pay rent. I removed her hand gently, but firmly turned toward the hallway. You'll regret this. Benjamin's voice followed me. You'll regret this. I walked to my office, closed the door, locked it with an audible click. Behind me, chaos erupted. Wendy's wailing, Benjamin's shouting, furniture scraping. I sat at my desk and listened. Their panic was music. 10 minutes passed. The shouting subsided into intense whispers. Then Wendy's voice again. Higher, phone call. I pressed my ear to the door. Gave us eviction papers. 30 days. Pause. Jack will responding. I don't know what happened. He was cold like we were strangers. Longer pause. We need to do something. Jacqueline's voice carried through the phone speaker. Calm, strategic. I couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear. Planning mode. Okay. Yes, tomorrow. Bring Samuel. We'll figure this out. More murmuring. Then Benjamin's voice, lower but venomous. He's going to regret this. I moved back to my desk and opened my laptop. Mackenzie had sent documents that afternoon. Trust creation, paperwork, asset protection strategy. They thought this was about the house. They had no idea I was protecting everything. My phone buzzed. Text from Jack Willen. Dad, Wendy called me. We need to talk. Coming over tomorrow with Samuel. This has gone too far. I read it twice. They were regrouping, coordinating, about to launch their counterattack. Let them come. I pulled up a calendar and marked the date. Day 1 of 30. The clock had started. In the living room, Wendy was still crying. Benjamin was pacing. I could hear his footsteps, back and forth, back and forth. They'd lived here for 4 years without contributing a single dollar. 4 years of treating my home like a hotel. 4 years of demands and disrespect and assumptions. 30 days left to enjoy that privilege. I looked at Mackenzie's trust documents again. 2 to 3 weeks until finalization. The timing would be tight, but it would work. By the time they realized the full scope of what I'd done, it would be too late to stop. Another text from Jacqueline. "We'll straighten this out. Don't worry." She wasn't texting me. She was texting Wendy. But Wendy must have shown her my number too, because a third message came through. "Dad, I know you're upset about something. Let's talk like adults tomorrow." Talk like adults. The woman planning to divorce her husband in 2 months to steal wedding gifts wanted to talk like adults. I turned off my phone. Tomorrow they'd come with their performance. Concerned daughter, diplomatic son-in-law, reasoned arguments, emotional manipulation. I'd seen the documentary already. I knew how it ended. Outside my office door, the house finally went quiet. Wendy and Benjamin had probably gone upstairs to strategize or cry or drink. I didn't care which. I opened a notebook and started writing, documenting the evening. Their reactions, their threats, Benjamin's aggression, Wendy's tears, everything Mackenzie might need if this ended up in court. The pen moved steadily across the page. Factual, detailed, dispassionate. Somewhere during the 4th year of their residence, I'd stopped being a father and become an ATM. Now I was neither. I was a property owner exercising his legal rights, and I had 29 days left to prepare for whatever came next. Saturday morning, I came downstairs to find Wendy in her bathrobe sprawled across the couch. "Dad." Her voice was weak, theatrical. "I can't get up. My heart is racing. The stress from this eviction. I think you should call a doctor." Benjamin hovered nearby, arms crossed, protective stance, both watching for my reaction. I walked past them to the kitchen. "There's cold medicine in the cabinet," I said without stopping. Behind me, silence. Then Wendy's frustrated exhale. I poured coffee and carried it to my office, closed the door. Sunday afternoon, Benjamin found me in the garage, blocked the doorway with his body. "You know what people will say, right?" Aggressive tone. Face too close to mine. "That you threw out your own daughter. Your pregnant daughter." Wendy wasn't pregnant. Just another lie. Your business partners, your church friends, they'll all know what kind of man you really are. I checked my watch. The eviction is legal. You have 26 days left. Now move. He didn't. We stood there for 10 seconds. 20. His jaw working, fists clenched. Finally, he stepped aside. I got in my truck and drove to the hardware store. Stayed there for 3 hours, reviewing inventory, talking to managers, being anywhere but home. When I returned that evening, an envelope sat on my kitchen counter. Handwritten heading proposal. I opened it. Benjamin's handwriting, itemized list. Investment opportunity, craft brewery partnership. Initial capital required $50,000. Terms, Wendy and Benjamin remain in residence. Pay nominal rent, $500 a month. Repay investment within 5 years. $50,000 up from the $30,000 he'd mentioned Friday night. Desperation inflating the numbers. I read the whole thing. 2 pages. Financial projections pulled from nowhere. Promises of returns. Guarantees of family harmony. At the bottom, this solves everything. We stay, you profit. Family stays together. I folded it, walked to the living room where they sat waiting, and handed it back. No. Wendy's face crumpled. Dad, we're trying to compromise. No, I repeated and returned to my office with my dinner. Through the wall, I heard their frustrated whispers, accusations, disbelief, the sound of dishes slamming. Monday and Tuesday passed similarly. Wendy alternated between tears and silence. Benjamin oscillated between threats and bargaining. I maintained my routine. Work home office meals alone. Their presence became background noise. Wednesday evening, Jacqueline arrived. She'd called that afternoon. Dad, we're coming over for dinner. Samuel and I, we need to talk as a family. Not a request, an announcement. They arrived at 6. Jacqueline carried grocery bags. We're cooking tonight. You work too hard. Samuel smiled. Firm handshake. Horace. Hope you don't mind us just showing up. Jacqueline was worried. Families should support each other through difficult times. They took over my kitchen. Jacqueline chopped vegetables. Samuel set the table. Wendy emerged from upstairs. Makeup perfect. No sign of her illness. Benjamin appeared freshly showered, playing the reasonable adult. An intervention carefully staged. We sat for the meal they had prepared. Chicken rice salad. Nice presentation. Jacqueline poured wine. Samuel made small talk about his car sales work. Everyone performed normally. Then Jacqueline shifted gears. Dad, this house must be a lot to manage alone. All these rooms, the yard work, the maintenance. Have you thought about something smaller? A nice condo. I cut my chicken. Chewed slowly. Samuel picked up the thread. The real estate market is strong right now. Houses in Paradise Valley sell fast. You could get top dollar. Help set everyone up comfortably. There it was. Jack will touch the picture frame on the side table. Adjusted it. Territorial gesture. We'd help you move, of course. And whatever proceeds you got. It would be nice to share with family. Help Wendy and Ben get started. Help Samuel and me with our house down payment. Everyone benefits. The house. They wanted the house sale money, not inheritance someday. Now the realization clicked into place with perfect clarity. Dad, I'm just saying you're getting older. Wouldn't it be easier to have something manageable, less responsibility? I set down my fork, looked at each of them. Jacqueline, Samuel, Wendy, Benjamin. 4 faces, 4 different masks, 1 agenda. I'm not selling my house. Jacqueline laughed lightly. Edge underneath. Dad, no one's pressuring you. We're just concerned. I stood. Thank you for your concern. I'm fine. Good night. The scrape of my chair, the walk to my office, the door closing. Behind me, shocked silence, then urgent whispers. I grabbed my phone and dialed Mackenzie's cell. I need to see you tonight. It's urgent. I'll be at the office in 30 minutes. I waited until I heard their cars leave. Jacqueline's Mercedes, then Benjamin's Camry, following coordinating planning their next move. I grabbed my keys and drove downtown. Mackenzie's office was lit. 23rd floor window glowing. He met me in the lobby. They're coordinating strategy to acquire my assets, I said, as we rode the elevator up. The eviction triggered something. Now they want me to sell the house, split the proceeds. Tonight's dinner was reconnaissance. In his office, Mackenzie pulled out fresh documents. Then we accelerate the trust creation. Everything house business savings transfers to professional management. You maintain full control during your lifetime. But after death, distribution follows your exact instructions. They can't challenge it, can't manipulate it. How fast can we move? I'll start paperwork tomorrow. We'll also change your bank account beneficiaries immediately. Remove your daughters entirely. 5,000 for the trust creation, but it's worth every penny. Do it. He pulled up forms on his computer. Beneficiary change authorizations. Trust structure outlines. I signed everything. Electronic signatures witnessed legal. 40 minutes later, I left with copies of everything. The drive home felt different, lighter somehow. I arrived near midnight. The house was dark, except for the living room lamp. Inside, Wendy and Benjamin had gone to bed. Empty wine glasses on my coffee table. They'd probably spent the evening plotting with Jacqueline on speakerphone. Let them plot. I had copies of the trust paperwork in my briefcase. Mackenzie would start asset transfers tomorrow. Within 3 weeks, everything I'd built would be protected. My phone showed 3 missed calls. Jacqueline, no messages. She knew something had shifted tonight. Maybe since that dinner conversation revealed too much. I thought about their performance. Samuel's diplomat act. Jacqueline's suggestion to sell the house. Everyone benefits. Everyone except me. They'd miscalculated. Thought I was a weak old man they could manipulate into surrendering my life's work. I was done being weak. 26 days until Wendy and Benjamin left. 3 weeks until the trust was finalized. They had that long to enjoy feeling like they still had leverage. I had that long to make sure they'd never manipulate me again. 2 weeks had passed since I'd served the eviction notice. 15 days remained. I set the dining room table myself that evening. 5 place settings. The good china I hadn't used since my daughters were children. Cloth napkins, water glasses. At my seat, I placed a manila folder face down. The folder contained 8 printed photographs. Samuel and a red-haired woman time-stamped geotagged. 2 hours before his wedding to my daughter. I'd invited everyone, both daughters, both sons-in-law. A family dinner, I'd said. They arrived separately, Jacqueline and Samuel, first 15 minutes early. I heard them in the living room, whispered conversation with Wendy and Benjamin coordinating, planning their approach. I called them to the table. The tension was immediate. They sat, exchanged glances, waited. I served roasted chicken and vegetables. Simple meal, nothing elaborate. This wasn't about hospitality. We ate in near silence for 10 minutes. Forks, scraping plates, water glasses lifted the sound of forced normally. Then Jacqueline started. Dad, we've all been talking. The situation with Wendy, it's stressful for everyone. Maybe it's time to think about simplifying the house, the business. It's a lot for one person. Samuel nodded, supportive. Horace, no one's saying you can't handle it. We just want to help. Selling at the right time in this market. We could help you organize everything. Make it easy. Wendy leaned forward, gentle voice. Dad, we're worried about you. All alone here. Wouldn't a nice condo be better? Less maintenance, less stress. I set down my fork, reached for the manila folder. Before we continue, there's something you should see. Jacqueline picked it up. Suspicious. What is this? I took a sip of water. Photographs from your wedding. Particularly interesting are the shots of Samuel with a red-haired woman 2 hours before the ceremony on the restaurant terrace. Samuel's face drained. That's not. Jacqueline opened the folder. I watched her eyes move across the first image, then the second. Her expression hardened into stone. Where did you get these? I ignored the question. I also overheard a phone conversation between you and Wendy. Let me quote, "2 more months and I file for divorce. Half the gifts are legally mine. Samuel already agreed to 60-40 split." Those were your exact words, Jacqueline. Wendy's hand flew to her mouth. Benjamin half stood. You spied on us. You had no right. I raised one hand, palm out. Stop. Benjamin sat. I've created an irrevocable trust. My house, my business, my savings, everything is now protected. After my death, you'll receive the minimum required by Arizona law, not a cent more. Jacquel's voice rose. You can't do this. We're your family. I stood, pushed my chair back, slowly folded my napkin beside my plate. Wendy and Benjamin have 15 days to find new housing. This conversation is over. Dad Jaquin stood too. You're destroying this family. Over what? A misunderstanding. I paused at the dining room doorway. Didn't turn around. I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting what I built from people who saw me as a resource, not a father. I walked down the hall to my office, closed the door, locked it. Behind me, voices erupted. Jacqueline shouting. Samuel's defensive protests. Wendy crying. Benjamin's angry curses. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. Email from Mackenzie sent an hour ago. Trust documents ready for final signature. Can you come in tomorrow morning? I typed back 9 a.m. From the dining room, the argument continued. Jacqueline demanding I come out. Benjamin threatening to break down the door. Empty threat. Wendy's sobs carrying down the hallway. They could argue all night. It wouldn't change anything. The photos were on the table. The truth was spoken. The trust was nearly complete. 15 days until Wendy and Benjamin left my house. However long it took for Jaylene and Samuel's fraudulent marriage to collapse on its own, I'd spent 2 weeks watching them manipulate, scheme, coordinate, watching them treat my home like their playground and my wallet like their property. Now they knew I'd been watching back, and I'd already won. Mackenzie's office at 9 the next morning. Jennifer Chan was already there, a specialist in estate planning he'd brought in to finalize the trust. Mr. Reynolds, she shook my hand. 50 professional, efficient papers spread across the conference table like a legal fortress. Everything's ready for your signature. I sat down and started signing. Page after page, initials here, full signature there, transfer of primary residence, business interests, bank accounts, investment portfolios, all moving into the irrevocable trust structure. This transfers your house to trust management, Jennifer explained. Upon your death, distribution follows these instructions. Minimum legal requirement to immediate family. Remainder to the charities you selected. And my daughters can't challenge this. They can try. Her voice was certain. But irrevocable trusts are extremely difficult to overturn. This is as protected as assets can be. I signed the final page. Done. 40 years of work. Protected. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. The next 13 days became a masterclass in psychological warfare. Day 2, I found my coffee maker shattered on the kitchen floor. Benjamin lounged at the table, newspaper spread in front of him. Oh, that he shrugged. Slipped out of my hands this morning. Accidents happen. I swept up the glass without comment. 11 days, I said, tossing the pieces in the trash. Day 4. I heard Wendy talking to Mrs. Patterson over the back fence. Our neighbor. I watched from the window. Wendy dabbed her eyes with tissue dramatic gestures. He's throwing us out with nowhere to go. I don't know what's gotten into him. Mrs. Patterson looked uncomfortable. I'm sure you and your father will work things out, dear. I don't know, he's changed. It's like he's not the same person. I turned away from the window. Let her perform for the neighbors. It changed nothing. Day 7. Jacqueline arrived with a woman carrying a clipboard. Dad, this is Dr. Morrison. She's a psychologist. We thought it might help to talk. I remained standing, arms crossed. I didn't agree to any conversation. The woman smiled professionally. Mr. Reynolds, your daughter is concerned about recent behavioral changes, sudden decisions cutting off family. These can sometimes indicate underlying issues that stop. I looked at Jacqueline. Out both of you now. Dad, she's trying to help. If you just listen, this is my house. You're leaving. They left. Day 10. I came home from the store to find my office door slightly ajar. I always closed it completely. On my desk, the trust documents sat exactly where I'd left them, almost exactly. The corner was bent differently. Someone had looked through them. That evening, Wendy was quieter than usual. Benjamin kept glancing at her. They knew now, really knew. The trust was real. The money was gone. Day 12. Wendy knocked on my office door. Afternoon. Benjamin wasn't with her. Dad, can we talk, just us? I gestured to the chair. She sat, tissue already in hand, eyes red. I've been thinking about everything. You were right about Ben, about how we've been living. He's not a good influence on me. I see that now. I waited. I've made terrible mistakes. I'm begging for your forgiveness. Another chance, I could change, I could be the daughter you deserve. The performance was flawless. Trembling voice, vulnerable posture, leaning forward. Every manipulation technique in her arsenal. I let the silence stretch. Watched her. Really watched her. If you'd truly realized your mistakes, Wendy, you wouldn't have come here asking for forgiveness as a transaction. You'd have come without expecting anything in return. But you're asking for the house for money, for me to change my mind about the trust. No, I just want me to believe Benjamin corrupted you, that you're a victim. But I heard you on the phone with Jaylene planning this. You were laughing, both of you, about manipulating me. Her face changed. Tears stopped. Voice went hard. Fine. Fine. You want to be alone, be alone. But don't expect us to care what happens to you. I didn't stand, didn't react. 8 days. Wendy started packing. She turned and walked out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. Through the ceiling, I heard her stomping upstairs. Benjamin's voice questioning. Then Wendy's angry response words, muffled but tone clear. She was telling him it hadn't worked, that I wouldn't cave, that they needed to actually find an apartment. Reality finally breaking through. I pulled up my calendar. 8 days until the eviction deadline. Mackenzie had already arranged for the sheriff if they refused to leave voluntarily. My phone showed a text from Jacqueline. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed this family. I deleted it without responding. The trust document sat in my desk drawer, signed, notarized, filed. Every asset I had spent 40 years building protected. The house was mine. The business was secure. My will reflected my choices, not their expectations. 8 more days of their presence. 8 more days of psychological warfare. I no longer felt. Then silence, space, peace. For the first time in 4 years, I'd have my house back. For the first time in months, I'd have my life back. The 30th day. I pulled into my driveway at 10 that morning. The sheriff's vehicle arrived 30 seconds behind me. Mackenzie's car followed. We'd coordinated this official legal no room for argument. Deputy Martinez stepped out. Mid-40s, experienced professional. We'd spoken on the phone twice. He knew the situation. Mr. Reynolds. He shook my hand. Let's get this done. Mackenzie joined us, briefcase in hand. Everything's in order. The eviction notice was properly served. The 30 days have elapsed. They're officially trespassing now. We walked to my front door together, my house, my property, but I knocked anyway. 3 firm knocks, silence. Then Benjamin's voice muffled, "Go away. You can't do this." Martinez stepped forward, hand resting on his duty belt. "Sir, this is Deputy Martinez with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. I'm here to enforce a legal eviction order. Open the door now, or I'll be forced to open it myself." "That becomes criminal trespass. Your choice." A long pause. Whispered argument inside. Then the door cracked open. Wendy's face appeared. Red eyes, defiant expression trying to mask panic. Martinez pushed the door wider, entered professionally. Mackenzie and I followed. The living room looked like a war zone. Clothes scattered everywhere. Pizza boxes stacked on my coffee table. Beer cans. Chaos. But no packed boxes. Nothing ready. "You folks weren't planning on leaving, were you?" Martinez surveyed the room, making notes. "All right. You have 2 hours to collect personal belongings. That means clothes, personal items, no furniture, no fixtures. The clock starts now." 2 hours, Wendy's voice pitched high. "We can't possibly. You've had 30 days, ma'am. 2 hours is generous." Benjamin appeared from the kitchen, unshaven, angry. "This is insane. We have rights." Mackenzie's voice cut through. "You have 0 rights to this property. No lease, no rental agreement, no ownership. This is the final day." Benjamin looked at me. "You're really doing this? Your own daughter?" I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Martinez checked his phone. 2 hours starting now. What followed was chaos and slow motion. Wendy frantically stuffing clothes into garbage bags, crying intermittently. Benjamin throwing things into a duffel bag with aggressive movements, muttering curses under his breath. After everything we did for him, Benjamin said loudly enough for me to hear, "Living in this huge place alone like a miser." Martinez's voice sharpened. Sir, this is Mr. Reynolds's property. I suggest you focus on packing and keep comments to yourself. I stood in the doorway, watched, didn't help, didn't speak, just witnessed them dismantling their unauthorized residency piece by piece. Wendy tried catching my eye multiple times. The manipulation playbook was still open, but I'd memorized every page, knew every trick, wasn't falling for any of it. 2 hours later, they carried the last bags to their car. An older sedan, dented, struggling financially already. At the car, Wendy turned. Last attempt. You'll regret this. When you're alone and need help, don't come crying to us. I met her eyes, calm, certain. I won't. They drove away, Wendy's car disappearing down the street, taking their presence, their demands, their manipulation with them. I stood in my doorway, my house truly mine for the first time in 4 years. Martinez handed me paperwork. They're officially out. If they return without permission, call immediately. That's criminal trespass. Thank you, Deputy. Mackenzie shook my hand. Well done, Horace. Most people cave before this point. You held the line. After they left, I walked through the house slowly. Living room where Benjamin had sprawled. Kitchen where Wendy had demanded money. Upstairs where they had occupied the guest room like permanent royalty. Empty now. All of it. Mine. That evening, my phone rang. Jacqueline. I considered not answering, but curiosity won. Yes. I hope you're satisfied. Her voice was ice. You destroyed this family. Everything we had. Was it worth it? I looked at the family photo on the shelf. Old picture. Different time, different people. I didn't destroy the family, Jacqueline. I stopped letting it destroy me. Silence. Then her voice cracked slightly. You've changed. I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm the same person. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice being used. We'll see how long you last alone. You'll need us eventually. She hung up. I set the phone down. 3 days later, it buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Samuel. I read it standing in my kitchen. Horace, I saw the photos. I know you know. Look, Jackie knew about my relationship too. This whole marriage was an arrangement. We're divorcing anyway. I'm asking you to stay out of it. I can make it worth your while. 10,000 to let this play out quietly. I read it once, deleted it, blocked the number. Jacqueline had known about the affair all along. The entire marriage was a scam from both sides. They had orchestrated it together, collected the money, planned to split it, and now Samuel wanted to pay me to stay quiet. $10,000 to let their fraudulent divorce proceed smoothly. I looked around my living room, the furniture I'd chosen, the silence I'd earned, the space I'd reclaimed. 4 years ago, I'd opened my door to Wendy and Benjamin temporarily. Let them take over my home, my peace, my life. I'd paid for a wedding that was a business transaction, written checks that funded schemes, believed I was helping family when I was funding my own exploitation. Now the house was empty, except for me. Wendy and Benjamin were gone. Jacqueline had cut contact. Samuel was sending desperate bribes I wouldn't dignify with responses. I walked to the window. The sun was setting over Paradise Valley, painting the desert gold. My house, my life, my choices. They thought they'd won when they moved in. When they manipulated, when they schemed, they'd been wrong. I had late August. I sat on my terrace with morning coffee watching the sun climb over Paradise Valley. The air was already warm, but up here on the hillside a breeze made it bearable. Quiet. Completely quiet, except for birds and the distant hum of the city below. 3 weeks since the eviction. 3 weeks of living alone in my house. My actual house, not a building I shared with resentful tenants who called me dead. The coffee maker worked. Benjamin had smashed my old one in a fit of passive-aggressive rage. I'd replaced it the day after they left. Small thing, but it mattered. Everything worked now. The television remote stayed where I put it. My chair in the living room held only me. The refrigerator contained food I'd bought eaten at my own pace without someone demanding I pay for their groceries. Simple things, revolutionary things. Wendy had called twice this week. I'd let both go to voicemail, deleted the messages without listening. She and Benjamin had found a cheap apartment on the outskirts. Benjamin was working some regular job. They were figuring it out. Without my money, without my house. Good. Jacqueline had called once too, 2 weeks ago, asking for money. I need help with a down payment after the divorce. Just $20,000. You're my father. I'd said one word. No. Then hung up. No explanation, no guilt, just boundary. She and Samuel had divorced as planned. The court had sorted through their wedding gift situation. Both lost money to lawyers, ironic justice. They'd schemed to collect cash, ended up spending it on legal fees to divide what remained. The postman arrived mid-morning. I retrieved the mail, carried it back to the terrace. An envelope from Mackenzie's firm. Heavy paper. I opened it with my letter opener. Final trust documents. All filed, all secured. Mr. Reynolds, the letter began. All trust documents have been finalized and filed with the state. Your business interests have been transferred to trust management. Estate distribution instructions are secured. You maintain full control during your lifetime, with ironclad protection thereafter. I read it twice, then set it aside. Complete. Legal fortress built. Estate protected. Life reclaimed. My phone sat on the table beside the guitar learning book I'd been working through. Wednesday, I had my 3rd lesson. I'd always wanted to play. 40 years of meaning to someday, when there was time now. Friday, I volunteered at the senior center doing repairs. My hardware expertise useful, helping people who needed it, who appreciated it, who didn't demand it as entitled right. The phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then did. This is Horace, Mr. Reynolds. A woman's voice, familiar. This is Carolyn Thornan, the photographer from your daughter's wedding. I hope you don't mind me calling. I've been thinking about you, wondering how things turned out. Carolyn, the woman who'd shown me the truth. Carolyn, I don't mind at all. Actually, I'm glad you called. Relief in her voice. I wasn't sure if I should. That day in my studio showing you those photos, I've thought about it so many times. I hope I did the right thing. You did. You absolutely did. Those photos changed everything. You gave me truth when everyone else was feeding me lies. And how are things now, if you don't mind me asking? I looked out over the valley, the morning light, the peace. Things are good, Carolyn. For the first time in a very long time, maybe years, things are truly good. I'm so glad to hear that. You deserve peace. I surprise myself. Would you like to get coffee sometime? I'd like to thank you properly, and honestly, it would just be nice to talk. She was smiling. I could hear it. I'd like that. How about next week? Next week sounds perfect. After we hung up, I stayed on the terrace. Coffee with Carolyn next week. A guitar lesson on Wednesday. Volunteer shift at the senior center. Friday. Business inspection. Thursday. A routine built around what I wanted, not what others demanded. I thought about the journey, the photographer's call that shattered my illusions. The evidence, the overheard conversation. The lawyer consultations, the eviction notice. The family dinner where I'd laid everything bare, the final days of psychological warfare. The sheriff at my door, each step necessary, each boundary essential. My daughters thought I'd destroyed the family, that I'd chosen loneliness over love. They were wrong. I'd chosen myself over their version of love that looked suspiciously like theft. I'd chosen peace over obligation. I'd chosen truth over comfortable lies. The sun climbed higher, warming the terrace. I finished my coffee. Inside, the guitar waited. A life waited. A future built on honest foundations, not manipulative quicksand. Wendy would call again. I'd let it go to voicemail again. Benjamin might text. I'd delete it. Jacqueline might demand. I'd decline. They were learning to solve their own problems. I was learning to let them. The trust documents sat on my desk inside. Every asset protected. Every decision mine. I stood and walked to the terrace railing. Looked out over Paradise Valley. My home, my view, my peace. Alone, yes, but free. And for the first time in years, maybe the first time ever, that was exactly what I wanted. The next chapter was mine to write. Coffee with someone who didn't want anything except conversation. Guitar music made for my own enjoyment. Repairs done because I chose to help, not because someone demanded it. A life lived on my terms. Justice wasn't revenge. It was protection. It was boundaries. It was saying no when no was the only sane answer. I'd saved myself, and that was worth everything. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impression of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching. Story 2. At my son's funeral, his wife threw me out of my own house. I'm Thomas Mitchell. What happened next changed everything. Picture this. Your child just died. You're grieving, and your daughter-in-law looks you in the eye and says, "Stop crying, pack your bags, and get out of my house now." She called me a worthless burden in front of everyone at my son's funeral. But here's what Victoria didn't know. The house she was kicking me out of, I built it in 1987. The money she thought she inherited, $850,000, that was always mine. For 8 years, she lived off my generosity while treating me like charity. Instead of arguing, I just walked away. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response of all. If you're new here, hit subscribe. I share stories about standing up to disrespect, and trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Because what Victoria discovered 3 days later taught both of us that assumptions can cost you everything. Let me start from the beginning. The signs were there from the beginning. I just chose to ignore them. When my son David died in that car accident 2 months ago, Victoria immediately took charge. "Don't worry about the arrangements, Tom," she said. "I'll handle everything." What she really meant was, stay out of my way. At the funeral home, she made every decision. The casket, the flowers, even the music. When I suggested David's favorite song, the one we used to play when we built this house together in 1987, she cut me off. "That's too depressing," Victoria said. "We need something more uplifting." I watched her command the room in her $300 black dress, directing everyone like she was the director of this tragic play. And me. I sat in my old gray suit, the one I'd worn to my wife's funeral 2 years earlier, feeling invisible. The second sign came during the reception at our house. My house, technically though, Victoria had been treating it like hers since David's death. She pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Tom, we need to talk about your situation." "My situation? You're financially dependent on us now. David was supporting you, and with him gone," she shrugged. "I can't carry that burden." Burden. That word hit harder than expected. "I've been more than generous letting you stay here," she continued. "But this house is mine now. Everything is mine. David left it all to me." I nodded slowly. Victoria saw that nod as defeat. What she didn't see was calculation. She had no idea that David had never owned this house. He lived here, yes. Grew up here, absolutely, but owned it never. She also didn't know about the filing cabinet in the basement. 4 drawers of meticulously organized financial records going back 40 years. The CPA in me never threw anything away. Most importantly, she didn't know about the trust. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The funeral guests saw what Victoria wanted them to see, a successful real estate agent taking charge during a family crisis, and an old man who couldn't handle his own affairs. They watched her shake hands and accept condolences like she was the head of the family now. Meanwhile, I sat quietly in David's old recliner, the one I'd bought him for his 16th birthday, and listened to her paint me as the dependent father-in-law. "Tom's having a hard time adjusting," I heard her tell our neighbor Helen Davis. "The poor man doesn't understand finances. David handled everything for him." Helen shot me a sympathetic look. She'd known me for 37 years, since the day I broke ground on this lot. But even she seemed to believe Victoria's version of reality. That's when I realized something important. People see what they expect to see. Victoria expected to see a grieving widower who couldn't manage on his own, so that's what she saw. The old Honda Civic I drove instead of something flashy. The simple clothes I wore instead of expensive suits. The quiet way I handled my grief instead of making a show of it. She mistook humility for helplessness, quiet for weak, generous for desperate. It was an understandable mistake. I'd spent 2 years since my wife Margaret's death living simply. No need for expensive toys or status symbols when you're learning to live alone. David understood that. He respected my choice to downsize my lifestyle. But Victoria, she measured worth by appearance, by volume, by who controlled the conversation. She was about to learn that the most dangerous person in any room is the one who doesn't need to prove anything. As the last guests left that Tuesday evening, Victoria cornered me by the front door. "I meant what I said, Tom. This arrangement isn't working anymore." I looked around the living room I'd painted 3 times over the decades, the hardwood floors I'd installed by hand, the crown molding I'd measured and cut with David when he was 12. "I understand," I said quietly. But Victoria had no idea what I understood, and she definitely had no idea what was coming next. Wednesday morning brought clarity and coffee in equal measure. I sat at my kitchen table, the one Margaret and I had bought at a garage sale in 1986, and made a list, not of what I was losing, but of what Victoria thought she was gaining. The house. 2,400 square feet of memories on Maple Street in suburban Cleveland. Current market value, according to Victoria's own real estate expertise, $420,000. The life insurance. David's policy, through his engineering firm, $150,000. Victoria had already started spending that money in her head. The furniture. Everything from Margaret's antique china cabinet to David's collection of engineering textbooks. Not valuable to others, but priceless to me. My dignity. Watching Victoria parade around like she'd inherited a kingdom when she'd actually inherited nothing at all. But here's what really bothered me. It wasn't the money or even the house. It was the erasure. Victoria was systematically removing every trace of the life Margaret and I had built here. She'd already boxed up Margaret's photos from the mantel. David's childhood drawings were gone from the refrigerator. Even my old CPA certificates had disappeared from the den wall. "I'm redecorating," explained when I asked about Margaret's photos. "David always said this place needed updating." Updating, as if 40 years of memories were outdated software. She gave me 30 days. 30 days to find somewhere else to live on what she assumed was Social Security and nothing else. 30 days to pack up 4 decades and pretend it never happened. The cruelest part, she was doing it all with such confidence, such certainty, that she held all the cards. Tuesday afternoon, she'd handed me a printed timeline. Actually printed it out like I was a tenant getting evicted. "November 15th, she said, pointing to the date circled in red. "That gives you time to find a nice senior community somewhere more appropriate for your situation." Your situation. There was that phrase again. "I've already looked into a few places." She continued, pulling out brochures like she was doing me a favor. "Sunset Manor has openings. It's only $800 a month for a studio apartment." $800 a month. She expected me to spend my entire Social Security check on rent and somehow survive on nothing else. "What about food?" I asked. "Transportation, medical bills?" She shrugged. "There are programs for people in your situation. Food stamps, Medicaid. The government takes care of senior citizens." The government. Like I was some charity case who'd never contributed anything to society. That's when I realized Victoria didn't just want me gone. She wanted me grateful for the opportunity to leave. She wanted me to thank her for 30 days instead of 0. To appreciate her generosity in not calling the police to have me removed immediately. To accept that this was simply how things worked now that David was gone. But Wednesday morning, sitting with my coffee and my list, I had a different realization. Victoria had made one critical assumption: that David owned everything she was claiming. She'd been married to him for 8 years. She'd lived in this house for 8 years. She'd probably never seen a deed or a mortgage statement, or any document that proved ownership of anything. Why would David handled the finances just like his mother and I had taught him? The man takes care of the money. Old-fashioned maybe, but it worked for us. Except David had never actually handled my brought groceries when I needed them, drove me to doctor appointments after Margaret died. But the money, the investments, the property that was always mine to manage. Victoria saw David's helpfulness and assumed dependency. She saw my gratitude and assumed obligation. She saw 2 years of quiet grief and assumed defeat. If I said nothing, if I just packed my bags and shuffled off to Sunset Manor like a good little senior citizen, what message would that send? That bullies win. That volume beats truth. That if you're loud enough and confident enough, you can rewrite history and steal someone's life. That respect is optional when you're dealing with old people. That my 40 years of marriage to Margaret meant nothing. That the house we built together was just bricks and wood. That the son we raised here could be forgotten as easily as photos removed from a mantle. The stakes weren't just financial. They were existential. But I had something Victoria didn't know about. Something that would change everything. I just needed to find the right moment to use it. And that moment was coming sooner than she thought. Thursday morning. Victoria let herself into my house with David's key. I was having breakfast when I heard the front door open. No knock. No good morning. She walked in like she owned the place, which in her mind she did. "Tom, we need to talk," she announced, marching into the kitchen with a manila folder under her arm. "About what? Your finances." She sat down across from me without being invited. "I've been thinking about your situation, and I need to understand exactly what David was covering for you." I took a sip of coffee, such as the utilities, the property taxes, the insurance. She opened her folder and pulled out a legal pad covered in her handwriting. "David never told me the exact amounts, but I need to know so I can budget properly." "Budget for what?" "For taking over those payments." "Obviously." She looked at me like I was slow. "Until you move out, I'll have to cover everything David was covering for you." I set down my coffee cup. "And what exactly do you think David was covering everything? The mortgage, the taxes, the electric bill. You're on a fixed income, Tom. Social Security doesn't stretch that far. Is that what David told you?" Victoria's pen stopped moving. "What do you mean? I mean, did David specifically tell you he was paying my bills?" "He didn't have to tell me. It's obvious." She gestured around the kitchen. "How else could you afford to live here? This house is worth over $400,000. And how do you know what it's worth?" "I'm a real estate agent, Tom. I know property values in this neighborhood." "But you've never seen the deed." The question hung in the air like smoke. Victoria's confident expression flickered for just a moment. "I don't need to see the deed. David inherited this house when your wife died. Did he?" "Of course he did. Who else would get it?" I stood up slowly and walked to the sink, rinsing my coffee cup with deliberate care. "You know, Victoria, you've made a lot of assumptions about my finances. They're not assumptions, they're facts. Really. What other facts do you have?" She consulted her legal pad. "David told me you never contributed a dime to this house." I turned around. "Is that what David told you?" "Yes." "Interesting. Because I built this house in 1987, paid cash for the lot, hired the contractors, supervised every day of construction." Victoria's face tightened. "That was 37 years ago. Things change. Some things, not ownership. Look, Tom, I know this is hard for you. Losing David, having to face reality about your financial situation, but denial won't help." "What denial?" Pretending you're not dependent on family charity. The word charity landed like a slap. I dried my hands on the dish towel, taking my time. Victoria, let me ask you something. What in 8 years of marriage did David ever show you a mortgage statement? We kept our finances separate. Did he ever mention making house payments? We didn't discuss every detail of his expenses. Did you ever see him write a check for property taxes? Her silence was answer enough. Here's what I think happened, I said, leaning against the counter. David helped me around the house, picked up groceries, did some yard work, and you assumed that meant he was supporting me financially, because that's what it looked like. Appearances can be deceiving. Victoria stood up, clearly frustrated. Fine. Show me the deed then. Prove you own this house. I don't have to prove anything to you. Yes, you do. Because I'm David's widow and I inherited everything. Did you stop answering questions with questions? Stop making assumptions. We stared at each other across the kitchen. Victoria's jaw was tight, her real estate agent composure cracking. You have until November 15th, she said finally. After that, I'm changing the locks. We'll see about that. She gathered her papers and headed for the door. We'll see about what, but I just smiled and started loading the dishwasher. Some conversations are better finished with lawyers present. Friday afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went down to the basement. The basement had always been my sanctuary. Margaret used to joke that I was like a squirrel down there, storing away every document and receipt, like they were acorns for winter. You never know when you'll need proof of something, I'd tell her. She'd roll her eyes and remind me that normal people didn't keep 40 years of bank statements. But I wasn't normal people. I was a CPA who'd learned early that paper trails tell stories, and stories protect you when memories fail or people lie. The filing cabinet stood exactly where I'd left it. 4 drawers of meticulous organization. Each drawer labeled by decade. Each file folder labeled by category. Each document filed chronologically. It was beautiful in its own way. I pulled out the bottom drawer first. 1980s. The decade that changed everything. Inside, I found the folder I was looking for. Real estate. 447 Maple Street. Yes. 447. The house number Victoria thought she now owned. The first document was the original land purchase agreement, March 12, 1987. Thomas Mitchell buyer, $43,000 for the lot. The second document was the construction contract, Mitchell and Sons Building Company. No relation to me, just a coincidence of names, $78,000 for a custom colonial. The third document was the most important, the original deed recorded March 15, 1987. Owner Thomas Mitchell. No cosigner, no joint ownership, no mortgage. I'd paid cash for everything. Victoria had no idea, of course. She'd been 4 years old in 1987, probably learning to tie her shoes while I was learning to read blueprints. But there was more in that folder. Much more. Insurance policies, property tax receipts, utility connection agreements, all in my name, all paid by me, all proving continuous ownership for 37 years. David's name appeared nowhere in any of these documents. I pulled out the second drawer. 1990s. More of the same. Property taxes paid annually by Thomas Mitchell. Insurance premiums paid quarterly by Thomas Mitchell. Even the landscaping receipts were in my name. The 2000s drawer told the same story, and the 2010s and the most recent file from 2024. But the real surprise was in the very back of the bottom drawer, in a folder labeled Trust Documents Private. This was the folder Victoria definitely didn't know about. Inside were papers that would change everything, documents that told a story she couldn't imagine. The first paper was a trust agreement, dated June 15, 1985, before David was even born. The Thomas and Margaret Mitchell Family Trust. The second paper is a bank statement from First National Bank of Ohio. Current balance as of October 31st, 2024, $853,412. The third paper was a list of trust beneficiaries. David's name was there, yes, but not as an inheritor. As a beneficiary during his lifetime with specific terms and conditions. Terms and conditions that Victoria had never bothered to ask about. The trust was complicated the way these things always are, but the basic structure was simple. Margaret and I were the original trustees. After Margaret's death, I became the sole trustee. David received monthly allowances for education, housing assistance, and family support. But ownership that always remained with the trust, which meant it remained with me. David had lived comfortably because I made sure he lived comfortably. The engineering degree I helped to pay for the wedding. I helped fund the various investments and opportunities that came his way. All of it flowed from this trust. All of it remained under my control. Victoria saw David's comfortable lifestyle and assumed he was independently wealthy. She saw his generosity toward me and assumed it came from his own earnings. She never imagined that the money flowing from David to me was actually my own money flowing back home. It's funny how assumptions work. You see what fits your expectations and ignore what doesn't. Victoria expected successful young couples to support their aging parents. So when she saw David helping me, she assumed dependency. She never considered the possibility that I was helping him. But there was one more document in that folder. One that would matter most when the time came for truth-telling. David's life insurance policy. $150,000, just like Victoria said. But the beneficiary wasn't Victoria. The beneficiary was the Thomas and Margaret Mitchell Family Trust, which meant the beneficiary was me. Victoria had been spending money that was never hers to begin with, making plans with resources that belonged to someone else, building a future on a foundation that didn't exist. I closed the filing cabinet and headed back upstairs. In the kitchen, I made myself a sandwich and thought about timing. Victoria had given me until November 15th to move out. Today was November 1st. That gave me exactly 2 weeks to decide how to handle this situation. I could call her right now, explain the truth, show her the documents, watch her world collapse in real time. Or I could wait. Let her keep making assumptions. Let her dig the hole deeper. Let her learn the lesson the hard way. As I ate my sandwich, I remembered something my old business partner used to say. Tom, sometimes the best negotiation strategy is letting the other guy talk himself into a corner. Victoria was definitely talking herself into a corner. The question was, how deep did I want to let her dig before I stopped her? I looked around the kitchen I'd designed 37 years ago. The cabinets I'd chosen, the countertops I'd installed, the windows I'd measured and ordered, my house, my trust, my choice. Victoria was about to learn that respect isn't negotiable, but first she needed to finish digging. Sunday morning brought the worst of Victoria. I was getting ready for church when she arrived with 3 of her real estate agent friends. She'd invited them for what she called a consultation about the house's potential. I heard them before I saw them. Victoria's voice carrying through the front door. This place has incredible bones, but the decor is so outdated. Classic old person style, you know. They walked through my house like it was already theirs. "Oh my God, Victoria, this crown molding is gorgeous," said a blonde woman in expensive boots. "Original, from 1987, Victoria replied. "Tom built this place, but he has no eye for modern design. Look at this wallpaper and that furniture. It's like a museum." I stood at the top of the stairs, listening to them catalog my life's work like it was a garage sale. "The bones are definitely there," said another woman, "but you'll need to gut the kitchen. Those cabinets are so 80s. "Already planning on it," Victoria said. "Tom will be moving to a senior community soon, so I'll have full control over renovations." Full control. Over my kitchen. The one Margaret and I had planned together for 6 months. I came downstairs wearing my church clothes. 3 women I'd never met were standing in my living room taking photos. Victoria's voice was artificially bright. "Perfect timing. I want you to meet some colleagues." She introduced them like I was a curiosity. "This is Tom David's father. He's the original owner, but he's transitioning to a more suitable living situation." Transitioning like I was a job change. "Mr. Mitchell," said the blonde one, "your house has such character. You must have put a lot of work into it." "Some," I said. "Victoria tells us you're moving to Sunset Manor. That's such a nice facility." I looked at Victoria. "Is that what I'm doing? We discussed this, Tom. November 15th. I remember you discussing it." An uncomfortable silence settled over the group. The real estate agents exchanged glances. "Well," said the blonde one, "we should probably let you get to church." "Actually," Victoria said, "Tom, while everyone's here, maybe you could tell them about the maintenance issues, the roof leak, the furnace problems." There was no roof leak. The furnace was 2 years old. "I'm not aware of any maintenance issues," I said carefully. "Tom, you know the upstairs bathroom faucet drips and the basement gets damp in the spring. The faucet needs a 50-cent washer. The basement has been dry for 20 years. Victoria's smile tightened. "Tom's very attached to this place. Sometimes he doesn't see problems that are obvious to others. Problems like what I asked. Like the fact that you can't afford to maintain a house this size anymore." The room went quiet. Even the real estate agents looked uncomfortable. "Can't afford it?" I asked. "Tom, we've been through this. Your Social Security barely covers basic living expenses, and you know this how? Because I'm not blind. You drive a 15-year-old Honda. You shop with coupons. You haven't updated anything in this house since the Clinton administration." One of the agents cleared her throat. "Maybe we should reschedule this tour, no?" "It's fine," Victoria said. "Tom understands the situation. He's had 2 years to adjust to reality since Margaret died." "What reality is that?" I asked. "That you're a 70-year-old man on a fixed income who can't handle a 2,400 square foot house anymore. 70, 68, whatever. The point is, you're making assumptions about my finances. They're not assumptions, Tom. They're observations. Observations about what? About the fact that you've been living off David's generosity for 2 years, and now that David's gone, you need to face reality." The words hung in the air like tear gas. The 3 real estate agents were actively looking for exits. "David's generosity," I repeated. "Yes. David paid your property taxes. David covered your utilities. David made sure you had groceries and medical care. Did he?" "You know he did. And you know this because I was married to him. I saw him writing the checks." "What checks?" Victoria's face flushed. "The checks for your expenses. Did you see him write checks to the county for property taxes? He handled those things online. Did you see him pay my electric bill? He transferred money to your account. Did you ever see bank statements showing these transfers? We kept our finances separate, so you never actually saw any of these payments." The blonde agent stepped forward. "You know what, Victoria? This feels like a family discussion. Maybe we should give you some privacy." "No," Victoria said sharply. "This needs to be said. Tom, you cannot keep living in denial about your financial situation." "What denial? The denial that you're anything other than a burden." The word echoed through the room. Even Victoria seemed surprised she'd said it out loud. "A burden," I said quietly. "I'm sorry, but yes, you're a burden. You have been since Margaret died. David was too kind to say it, but someone has to. Too kind to say what that supporting you was bankrupting him. Bankrupting him. Yes, the property taxes alone are $8,000 a year. Add utilities, maintenance, your medical expenses." She was building steam now, letting 2 months of frustration pour out. "David spent $40,000 last year keeping you afloat. $40,000 at least. And now he's gone and I'm supposed to pick up that burden. I have my own life to think about." The real estate agents were edging toward the door. "So you're throwing me out," I said. "I'm giving you a month to find appropriate housing." "That's more generous than most people would be." "Generous?" "Yes, generous. Because frankly, Tom, you never contributed anything to David's success. He built his own life, earned his own money, bought his own house." "This house?" "Yes, this house. David inherited it from Margaret, and now I inherit it from David. That's how inheritance works." I nodded slowly. "I see." "Good, finally. Victoria, what you might want to check your facts before making statements like that in front of witnesses." She laughed. "What facts, Tom? I'm a real estate professional. I know how property ownership works. Do you better than you do, apparently." I looked at the 3 women by the door. They were witnessing something they definitely hadn't signed up for. "Ladies, I said you might want to ask Victoria to show you the deed to this house before you start planning renovations." Victoria's face went white. "Tom, don't tell the truth, but I'd said enough. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people hang themselves with their own words." "Enjoy your tour," I said and headed for the front door. I had a lawyer to call, too. Monday morning, I sat in attorney Margaret Collins's office with 3 manila folders on the mahogany desk between us. Margaret Collins, no relation to my late wife, just another one of life's small coincidences, had been handling my legal affairs for 20 years. She knew exactly what those folders contained. "Tom," she said, adjusting her reading glasses, "I have to ask, are you sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure. Because once we start this process, there's no taking it back. Victoria will know everything." "Good." Margaret opened the first folder. "Let's review what we have. The original deed to 447 Maple Street lay on top. Thomas Mitchell, sole owner, recorded March 15, 1987. No co-signers, Margaret noted. No joint ownership. No mortgage. You paid cash for the land and construction. Correct. She opened the second folder. Property tax records for 37 years. All paid by you from your accounts. Correct. Insurance policies, utility bills, maintenance contracts, all in your name. Correct. She opened the third folder. And this is the big one. The Thomas and Margaret Mitchell Family Trust. The trust documents were thick, complex, full of legal language that took years to develop and decades to fund. Current balance, Margaret asked, though she already knew. $853,412 as of last Friday. And David's status in the trust beneficiary during his lifetime, never a trustee, never an owner. Margaret leaned back in her leather chair. Tom, this is a substantial estate. Victoria had no idea. And David never told her about the trust structure. David was a good son, but he wasn't detail-oriented about finances. He knew I helped him when he needed help. He probably never thought to explain where the money came from. So Victoria assumed that David was supporting me instead of the other way around. Margaret shook her head. It's understandable, I suppose. Young couples don't usually have trusts this size backing them up. The irony is beautiful, I said. Victoria kicked me out of my own house using my own money to threaten me. How so? David's life insurance, $150,000. She's been making plans with that money for 2 months. But the beneficiary is the trust, which means the beneficiary is me. Margaret pulled out a calculator. So let me make sure I understand. Victoria thinks she inherited a $420,000 house and $150,000 in life insurance. That's right. But actually, she inherited nothing. The house belongs to you, and the insurance money goes to your trust. That's right. And she's been treating you like a charity case while planning to spend nearly $600,000 that was never hers. That's right. Margaret was quiet for a moment, processing the situation. Tom, I have to ask, why did you let this go on for 2 months? Why didn't you correct her assumptions immediately? I thought about that Sunday morning scene. Victoria calling me a burden in front of strangers. The casual cruelty of it. Because I wanted to see how far she'd go. And she went pretty far. Margaret nodded. What do you want to do now? I want to establish clear boundaries. Legal boundaries. All kinds of boundaries. She pulled out a legal pad. Talk to me. First, I want the insurance claim processed immediately. The money belongs to the trust, not to Victoria. Done. That's straightforward. Second, I want Victoria served with formal notice that she's a tenant in my house, not an owner. Also straightforward. How much notice? 30 days. The same time frame she gave me. Margaret smiled slightly. Poetic justice. Third, I want her to understand exactly what David's relationship to the trust was, so she can't claim ignorance going forward. We can provide complete documentation. And fourth, I paused. I want witnesses present when we have this conversation. Witnesses. The same real estate agents who heard her call me a burden yesterday. They should hear the truth, too. Margaret set down her pen. Tom, that feels like public humiliation. No. Public humiliation is what Victoria did to me. This is public education. There's a difference. Victoria humiliated me to make herself feel powerful. I'm educating people to prevent future misunderstandings. Margaret considered this. The real estate agents aren't necessary for the legal process, but they're necessary for the social process. Explain. Victoria spent 2 months telling people that I'm a broke old man living off family charity. Those people deserve to know the truth. And Victoria deserves to hear that truth in front of the same people she lied to. Exactly. Margaret made notes on her legal pad. When do you want to do this tomorrow? Give Victoria 24 hours to enjoy her assumptions. And if she refuses to meet, then we serve the papers without explanation and let her figure it out. Margaret pulled out her calendar. I can have everything ready by 10 a.m. tomorrow. Perfect. Where do you want to meet? Victoria's real estate office, where her colleagues can see what respect looks like. Margaret looked up from her calendar. Tom, I've been practicing law for 30 years. I've seen a lot of family disputes. This isn't about the money, is it? No. It's about the disrespect. It's about boundaries. Victoria needs to learn that you can't treat people badly just because you think they're powerless. And if she'd been respectful from the beginning, then we'd be having a different conversation. I would have explained the situation privately and helped her transition to independence. But she wasn't respectful. She was cruel. There's a difference between grief and cruelty. Margaret closed the folders. I'll make the calls this afternoon. Thank you. Tom. For what it's worth, I think David would be proud of how you're handling this. I stood up and shook her hand. David taught me something important. What's that? That quiet strength beats loud ignorance every time. He was a smart boy. He learned from the best teacher. Margaret, no life. Life taught him that respect is earned, not inherited. As I left the law office, I thought about Victoria's timeline. She'd given me until November 15th to move out. Tomorrow was November 5th. She was about to learn that some deadlines cut both ways and some assumptions cost more than you can afford to pay. The quiet man was about to speak up, and when quiet men finally speak, smart people listen. Victoria was about to find out exactly how smart she really was. Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., Margaret Collins and I walked into Premier Realty on Main Street. Victoria was at her desk, showing house photos to a young couple. She looked up when we entered, and her face went from professional smile to confusion to something approaching alarm. Tom. What are you doing here? We need to talk, I said calmly. Privately. The young couple looked between us, sensing tension. I'm with clients, Victoria said, her real estate agent composure kicking in. Can this wait? No, Margaret Collins said, stepping forward. I'm Margaret Collins, attorney at law. We need to discuss some urgent legal matters regarding your late husband's estate. The words attorney and legal matters had an immediate effect. The young couple exchanged glances. Maybe we should reschedule, the husband said. No, that's fine, Victoria said quickly. Tom, can you just wait in the conference room? I'll be right there. Actually, Margaret said, I think your colleagues should hear this too. Victoria's face went pale. My colleagues. The 3 ladies from Sunday. I believe they're planning renovations based on some assumptions that need to be corrected. Around the office, conversation slowed. Other agents pretended to work while clearly listening. Tom, what is this about? Victoria's voice had an edge now. It's about the house, I said simply. We already discussed the house. No, you discussed the house. I listened. Victoria's client couple was backing toward the door. We'll definitely call to reschedule, the wife said. Wait, Victoria called after them, but they were already gone. The blonde agent from Sunday, Jessica, I think her name was, approached cautiously. Victoria, is everything okay? Everything's fine, Victoria said tightly. Tom's just having some difficulty accepting his new living situation. Actually, Margaret said, opening her briefcase, Tom's having difficulty accepting his old living situation. What does that mean? Margaret pulled out the first folder. It means we need to clarify some misconceptions about property ownership. There are no misconceptions, Victoria said. I inherited David's house. What house is that? Margaret asked. 447 Maple Street. And you have documentation of this inheritance, David's will. David's will left his personal property to you, yes. His car, his clothing, his personal effects, and his house. David didn't own a house. The words dropped into the office like stones into still water. Every conversation stopped. What do you mean he didn't own a house? Victoria asked. Margaret opened the folder and pulled out the deed. 447 Maple Street is owned by Thomas Mitchell. Purchased March 15th, 1987. No co-signers, no joint ownership, no mortgage. That's impossible. Here's the deed. Victoria snatched the paper and read it. Her face went from pale to white. This has to be wrong, she said. David inherited this house when Margaret died. Margaret Mitchell owned no property, Margaret Collins said. Everything was purchased by Thomas Mitchell before their marriage. But David lived there his whole life, as Tom's son in Tom's house. Jessica and the other agents were drawing closer now, fascinated despite themselves. I don't understand, Victoria said. David paid all the bills, the taxes, the utilities, everything. No, I said quietly. David helped me around the house. I paid all the bills. That's not true. Margaret pulled out the second folder. Property tax records for 37 years, all paid by Thomas Mitchell. Insurance policies, she continued pulling out papers. All in Thomas Mitchell's name. Utility bills, bank records, maintenance contracts, all Thomas Mitchell. The Victoria stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. This doesn't make sense, she said. David had money, good money. He was an engineer. David was comfortable because Tom made sure he was comfortable, Margaret said. What does that mean? Margaret pulled out the third folder. The Thomas and Margaret Mitchell Family Trust. Current balance, $853,412. The office was completely silent now. David was a beneficiary of the trust during his lifetime, Margaret continued. Tom provided financial support for David's education, his wedding, his various needs. You're saying Tom was supporting David. I'm saying Tom was supporting his son from his own resources. Victoria sank into her desk chair. But David told me he was helping Tom financially. David was helping Tom practically. Groceries, rides to appointments, yard work. Tom was helping David financially. The life insurance, Victoria said suddenly. David's life insurance, that's mine. Margaret pulled out another paper. The beneficiary of David's life insurance policy is the Thomas and Margaret Mitchell Family Trust. No. Yes. That money is mine. That money belongs to Tom. Victoria looked around the office. Every agent was staring at her. The woman who'd been so confident Sunday morning, so certain of her inheritance, so dismissive of the old man's protests. "Tom," she said, her voice small now. "I didn't know. You didn't ask. You could have told me. You could have asked respectfully." Margaret closed the folders. "Victoria, you have 30 days to find alternative housing arrangements. 30 days, the same timeline you gave Tom." "But where will I go? That's not Tom's concern anymore," Margaret said. "You're a capable adult with a career. I'm sure you'll figure something out." Victoria looked at me with something I'd never seen from her before. Respect. "Tom, I'm sorry. I made assumptions." "Yes, you did. Can we work something out? Some kind of arrangement?" I considered the question. Around us, the real estate office was perfectly quiet. "Victoria, respect isn't negotiable. It never was. I understand that now." "Do US? Good. That's the first step toward earning it back." Margaret and I headed for the door. Tom, Victoria called after me. "What happens now?" I turned back. "Now you learn what I've always known." What's that quiet people aren't weak people. We're just selective about when we use our voices. And with that, we left. The silence behind us spoke volumes. By Thursday morning, the entire story had spread through Cleveland's suburban real estate community like wildfire. I knew this because Helen Davis, my neighbor for 37 years, brought me coffee and the latest gossip. "Tom, you should have seen Victoria at the grocery store yesterday," Helen said, settling into Margaret's old chair at my kitchen table. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. "How so?" "Well, for starters, she was shopping in the clearance section. Victoria, who never bought anything that wasn't name brand." Helen stirred her coffee thoughtfully, and she was alone. Usually she's got those real estate friends of hers trailing behind, like she's some kind of celebrity. Maybe they were busy, or maybe they're keeping their distance now that the truth is out. Helen had always been perceptive about social dynamics. "What truth is that?" I asked, though I already knew. "That she 2 months treating you like a charity case while planning to spend money that was never hers." Helen shook her head. "People are talking, Tom, and not in a good way for Victoria." "What are they saying?" "That she showed poor judgment, that she made assumptions about finances without doing her homework. And in real estate, homework matters." "Exactly. Her broker called her in for a meeting yesterday afternoon." This was news to me. "How do you know that?" "Because my sister's daughter works at Premier Realty. She said the whole office was buzzing about what happened Tuesday morning." Helen leaned forward conspiratorially. "Apparently, 3 different clients have already asked to be transferred to other agents." "Why? Because if Victoria can't figure out who owns a house she's been living in for 8 years, how can she be trusted with their real estate transactions?" I hadn't considered that angle, but it made sense. Real estate was built on trust and competence. Victoria had publicly demonstrated a lack of both. "There's more," Helen continued. "You know that young couple she was meeting with when you showed up vaguely? They posted about it on social media. Something about dodging a bullet with an agent who doesn't understand property law. They posted about it, with photos of the office and everything. It's gotten hundreds of likes. The ripple effects were spreading faster than I'd anticipated." My phone rang. Margaret Collins. "Tom, we have some developments." good or bad. Depends on your perspective. Victoria's attorney called this morning. She hired an attorney, apparently. He wanted to discuss a settlement. What kind of settlement Victoria would like to stay in the house for 6 months instead of 30 days. She's offering to pay rent. How much rent? $2,000 a month. I almost laughed. For a house worth $420,000 market rent would be closer to $3,000, yes. What did you tell him? That we'd consider reasonable offers. And what's reasonable? $3,500 a month first and last month in advance, plus a security deposit equal to 1 month's rent. So $10,500 up front. Correct. If she wants to stay, she pays market rate like any other tenant. Can she afford that? That's not our problem. But her attorney seemed to think it might be challenging given her current circumstances. After I hung up, Helen was studying my face. Victoria wants to stay, she asked. She wants to pay below market rent to stay. And you said I said she can pay market rent like anyone else. Helen nodded approvingly. Fair is fair. Friday afternoon brought another visitor, David's old college friend, Mike Thompson. Tom, I owe you an apology, he said at my front door. For what? For believing Victoria's version of things. She told everyone that David was supporting you financially. And you believed her. I did. And I'm sorry. I should have known better. Mike shifted uncomfortably. The thing is, David always talked about how proud he was of your success. How you'd built this house, how you'd managed your investments, how you'd taught him about financial responsibility. So why did you believe Victoria? Because it fit what I expected to see. Old man, dead wife, grown son helping out. It seemed natural. Assumptions again. Yeah, and I'm not the only one. A lot of David's friends made the same assumption. And now we're all feeling pretty stupid. And we're wondering what else Victoria might have misrepresented about David. That was an interesting development. Victoria's credibility was collapsing across multiple social circles. Saturday morning, Margaret Collins called with the final update. Victoria's attorney called back, she said. She can't afford the rent. So she's moving out. She's moving out, but there's something else. What she's also leaving Premier Realty. Voluntarily. Let's call it mutually agreed upon. So Victoria was losing her house and her job in the same week. Tom, I have to ask, do you feel bad about any of this? I looked around my kitchen, the one Margaret and I had designed together, the one Victoria had planned to gut and renovate. Victoria made choices. She chose to be cruel instead of kind. She chose assumptions instead of questions. She chose to humiliate me in front of strangers. And now she's facing consequences. Natural consequences. I didn't fire her from her job. Her clients did that by requesting other agents because they lost confidence in her judgment. Exactly. This isn't revenge. This is accountability. And Victoria is learning that actions have consequences. It's a lesson she should have learned years ago. Sunday morning, I sat in church thinking about forgiveness and boundaries. They weren't opposite things, I realized. They were complementary. I could forgive Victoria for her assumptions and still maintain boundaries about respect. I could forgive her cruelty and still expect her to face the natural consequences of her choices. Forgiveness didn't mean pretending nothing had happened. It meant accepting what had happened and moving forward with wisdom. Victoria was moving out next weekend, and I was moving forward with a new understanding of my own quiet power. Sometimes the best lesson you can teach someone is to let them teach themselves. 3 weeks later, I sat in my living room reading the Sunday paper when the doorbell rang. Victoria stood on my porch with a moving box in her hands. "Hi, Tom." "Victoria, I found some things that belong to you. Photo albums from when David was little, some of Margaret's recipe cards." I opened the door wider. "Come in." She set the box on the coffee table and looked around the room she'd planned to renovate. "It looks the same," she said. "Why would it look different? I don't know. I guess I thought you might change things after everything." "Some things don't need changing." We sat in the quiet for a moment. "Tom, I owe you more than an apology." "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do. I treated you terribly. I made assumptions about your life, your finances, your worth. I was cruel when I should have been grateful. And now I understand something I should have understood from the beginning." "What's that?" "That David learned his values from someone. His kindness, his generosity, his quiet strength. He learned all of that from you." I nodded. "David was a good son. He was, and you were a good father. I just couldn't see it because I was too busy making assumptions." "We all make assumptions, Victoria. The question is what we do when we learn we're wrong." "I'm trying to learn from this." "Good. I found a job in Columbus. Fresh start, new city. Maybe I can do better there." "I hope you can." She stood to leave, then turned back. "Tom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. If I'd been respectful from the beginning, if I'd asked questions instead of making demands, would things have been different?" I thought about that. Probably. I would have helped you transition to independence, given you time to find your feet. We might have found a way to honor David's memory together, instead of fighting over it. Victoria picked up her purse. "I guess respect really isn't negotiable, is it?" "No, it's not." "Thank you for teaching me that." After she left, I opened the box she'd brought. David's baby pictures, Margaret's handwritten recipes, small treasures that had somehow ended up in the wrong hands. I thought about the past 3 months. The funeral, the confrontation, the legal resolution, the natural consequences. Victoria had learned an expensive lesson about assumptions and respect, but I'd learned something too. I'd learned that quiet strength doesn't mean silent acceptance of disrespect. I'd learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're guidelines for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth and let people deal with the consequences of their own choices. David would have been proud of that lesson. Margaret would have approved of the quiet way I'd handled it. And me, I was at peace. If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated because of your age, your quiet nature, or your humble lifestyle, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to remind someone that respect isn't inherited, it's earned? Sometimes the best response to disrespect is simply proving them wrong. And sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones who don't need to prove anything at all. Until next time, remember, quiet doesn't mean weak. It just means selective.